Traore rejects IMF's debt trap. Africa chooses freedom over slavery. The world watched in shock as Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traoré, took the stage and delivered a message that echoed across Africa, Europe, and America. We will not be slaves to debt. We will not sell our future for crumbs. Africa chooses freedom. His words were not just a statement, they were a declaration of war against decades of financial manipulation imposed by the International Monetary Fund and the Western elite. For years, the IMF has promised prosperity to African nations. In reality, it delivered chains. Loans disguised as aid, interest rates designed to cripple, and conditions that demanded the surrender of sovereignty. From Ghana to Zambia, from Kenya to Mali, countries were told that the only path to development was through IMF contracts. But behind the fine print lay the same strategy repeated over and over: drain the resources, control the currency, and keep Africa permanently dependent. Burkina Faso was next on the list. A proposal was placed on Traoré's desk: billions of dollars in loans in exchange for open access to gold, oil, and land. The deal looked like salvation on the surface, but the hidden terms were poison. Privatize national industries. Cut subsidies for food and fuel. Allow foreign companies unrestricted control. And when the debt inevitably grew, surrender more mines, more oil fields, and more power. It was the same story the IMF had written across the continent for decades. But this time, something was different. Traoré did not sign. He did not negotiate. He tore up the proposal in front of his cabinet and declared, "Burkina Faso's future will not be written in Washington or Paris. It will be written here, by our people." That moment sent shockwaves through financial capitals around the globe. The IMF was not just rejected, it was exposed. The trap was simple but deadly. Loans are offered with the promise of progress, but the money flows back almost immediately through inflated contracts, foreign consultants, and interest payments. The people see no benefit, infrastructure crumbles, hospitals go empty, and schools are starved of funds. Yet the debt grows larger every year until governments are forced to hand over control of their most valuable assets. Gold mines that once funded African communities now fill Western banks. Oil that should power African cities is shipped to Europe. And when leaders resist, sanctions, coups, and even assassinations follow. Traoré knew this history. He studied how Ghana, once called the Black Star of Africa, was suffocated by IMF policies. He saw how Zambia was forced to sell its copper mines for pennies, leaving its people in poverty while foreign corporations grew rich. He learned how Nigeria, Africa's giant, was trapped in endless cycles of debt payments that drained more money than the nation ever received in aid. And he swore that Burkina Faso would not walk the same path. In his speech to the nation, Traoré said, "Debt is not development. Debt is control. When they give you loans, they are not helping you. They are buying your future at a discount." His words resonated with millions of Africans who had lived under the shadow of IMF dictates. For the first time in decades, a leader had the courage to say no. The West was stunned. In Washington, officials warned of serious consequences. In Paris, policymakers whispered about sanctions. In London, analysts predicted economic collapse for Burkina Faso. But in Ouagadougou, the people filled the streets to celebrate. They chanted Traoré's name, waving flags and banners that read, "Africa is not for sale." It was a moment of unity, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the entire continent. Then came the twist that nobody expected. Traoré announced that Burkina Faso would turn to its own resources and its own people. Gold revenues would be redirected to build schools and hospitals. Oil reserves would be managed by national companies. Small farmers and local businesses would receive direct support instead of foreign corporations. And most shockingly of all, Traoré revealed negotiations with Russia and China. Not for loans with deadly conditions, but for partnerships based on mutual respect. He made it clear, "We will trade with the world, but we will not be owned by the world." The IMF scrambled to respond. Western media launched a campaign painting Traoré as reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible. Headlines screamed about the collapse of Burkina Faso's economy, even as local markets showed signs of growth. International think tanks predicted famine and chaos, while African voices spoke of sovereignty and hope. The clash was not just economic, it was ideological. One side demanded submission to the old order. The other side, led by a young African soldier, demanded independence. Across the Sahel, leaders of Mali, Niger, and Guinea applauded Traoré's stand. Together they formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a regional pact rejecting IMF influence and embracing Pan-African cooperation. For the first time in modern history, African leaders were uniting not under the guidance of Europe, but against it. They pledged to build their own institutions, create their own currency systems, and use their resources for their people, not foreign bankers. The world is beginning to understand the stakes. Africa holds 30% of the planet's natural resources. Without African gold, Western banks would collapse. Without African oil, Western industries would grind to a halt. Without African markets, Western corporations would lose billions. The IMF's debt trap was designed to keep this power hidden, to keep Africa dependent, to make sure that freedom never became reality. But Traoré ripped the mask away, and once the truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. The response from the people has been overwhelming. From Dakar to Kinshasa, from Johannesburg to Khartoum, Africans are asking the same question. If Burkina Faso can say no, why can't we? Social media is flooded with support. Songs, poems, and speeches celebrate Traoré as a hero of a new Africa. Students discuss his words in universities. Farmers talk about him in the fields. The message is spreading faster than any Western attempt to silence it. But with every victory comes danger. Intelligence reports suggest Western powers are already plotting to destabilize Burkina Faso. False stories are being planted in global media. Arms are being funneled to rebel groups. Old allies are being bribed to betray. The IMF may have lost the first battle, but the war is far from over. Traoré himself admitted this in a recent address. They will not forgive us for choosing freedom. They will try to break us, but we are ready. We are not afraid. His words were met with thunderous applause, and so the struggle continues. The rejection of the IMF debt trap is not just about Burkina Faso. It is about every nation that has ever been told to bow. It is about every leader who was punished for daring to dream. It is about every citizen who has been forced to live in poverty while their wealth enriched foreign lands. It is about Africa finally standing tall and saying, enough. As the world watches, history is being written in real time. The question is not whether Traoré will succeed. The question is whether Africa will rise with him. Will this be the moment the continent breaks free from centuries of control? Will this be the spark that ignites a new era of independence? Or will the weight of the old system crush the dream before it can bloom? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. The IMF debt trap has been exposed, and millions will never look at it the same way again. In the end, Traoré's rejection is more than politics. It is a symbol of dignity. It is a reminder that no nation is too small to stand tall, no people too weak to demand respect. It is proof that courage is more powerful than fear, and freedom is more valuable than gold. And as long as leaders like Traoré continue to rise, the dream of a free Africa will never die. If you believe Africa deserves freedom over slavery, share this message. And if you want to follow every step of this historic journey, subscribe now. Together, let us rise. Together, let us stand. Together, let us declare to the world, Africa is not for sale.